half of a memorial to 44 Civil War dead. And there's been quite a bit of controversy over this relocation of the statue. I'm going to flip it around so you can see what workers are doing. So that is the bottom half of the cenotaph, of the memorial. And it has taken weeks for workers to secure it, dig it up, and get it into position. Right now it's above ground. It's sitting on those green beams there, and there's a big crane here waiting to lift it onto a flatbed truck. So this statue, this memorial, it was built to commemorate the lives of 44 Civil War dead from St. Augustine, Florida. And there's been quite a protest over it because the supporters of the monument say that it didn't have any Confederate markings. It didn't have any kind of, it wasn't a memorial to slavery or to racism or to oppression, but rather simply a way for local families to remember the 44 men and boys who died in the Civil War and never came back. The monument was built, and the actual remains were never put under or near the monument, but it's a place where families have gone for decades to remember their war dead. The protesters who have led the fight for its removal say that it is a reminder of a painful past. It reminds people of slavery, and they wanted it gone. So it's going to be moved to a location about 19 miles from here along a river, along the St. Johns River here in Northeast Florida. The St. Augustine City Council voted 3-2 to move the monument. It was a contentious vote. They had about a 9-hour public debate over it. And in the end, it was a 3-2 vote led by the mayor, Tracy Upchurch. So here's a question from Carolyn. Why move it? There was a lot of pressure from activists who said that it was a monument to racism and to the painful past. The momentum to move the monument really got going after the May police shooting and killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis. I've read city memos that express concern here in the city from city officials that there was going to be civil unrest. One of the leaders of the movement to relocate the statue is Reverend Ron Rowles, who is based in Alachua County, nearby Alachua County, but leads a congregation, a church here in St. Augustine, and he has been one of the most vocal supporters of relocating the monument. So some of those who support keeping the monument here say that St. Augustine, a city that touts itself as the nation's oldest, really shouldn't be moving historic monuments, because this is a city, after all, that draws millions of tourists every year because of its history. The city was founded in 1565 by the Spanish, and it is considered to be the oldest continuously occupied European settlement in the United States. So the monument's going to be moved to a location called the Trout Creek Fish Camp. I went there the other day, and it's really beautiful surroundings. There are trees and the river's there. People can take their boats out. It'll be right along the road, right along the entrance to Trout Creek Fish Camp. And the property, as I entered it, I saw that they were preparing the spot where the monuments would go, and there was a gigantic Trump-Pence sign right at the entrance. So here's a question from Santa Clarita. If they weren't involved in the slave trade, why move it? Well, this was something, again, that was debated for many hours by the city here, and ultimately the city leaders voted to move it. Back in 2017, they had agreed that they, instead of moving it, they had decided to contextualize it, and that meant putting plaques at its foot and other markers and memorials that recognize the struggle for civil rights here and other historic events that kind of put this monument into context. Some of the people who most objected to moving this, in fact, there were lawsuits filed to prevent its moving. They said that they objected to reinterpreting the original history of the monument. When this monument was placed, it was done by families of the Civil War dead, and it was simply a way to remember their sacrifice. They fought for the Confederate side, they lost. Some of their bodies were never recovered. Some of them died in prison hospitals. Some of them were killed on the battlefield, but their remains never came home. And so some of the families here, in fact, there's 38 direct descendants of the 44 Civil War dead, were named in the lawsuit suing the city of St. Augustine to try to prevent its removal. And some of those that I've talked to, such as Jill Passetti, she told me that, as a little girl, she remembers coming to this memorial to remember her descendant who fought and was killed in the Civil War. Here's a comment from Santa Clarita. Remove all traces, it will be all forgotten for future generations to learn. Here's another comment from Carolyn. You can never erase history regardless. So this has been a difficult process to get this monument ready for relocation, because it's built there's brick, and there is coquina, which is pressed clamshells that are fragile. And so there have been two of the city council members who voted against moving it were worried that it would be damaged or destroyed in transit, that they wouldn't be able to move it. They had initially expected that they'd be able to move it by the end of August. Now we're well into September, and they're behind schedule, but finally getting ready to move it. So here's the crane. So I can't actually get in there to get a better look. There's a fence that goes around this entire site. It's a double fence there. And so the best I can do is to stand on this tree stump here to try to get a better view. Excuse me, sir, can I ask what you think about the moving of the monument? I'm live streaming. Would you mind coming closer and giving me your opinion? Nice. Do you want me to get a picture from up here?
Yeah, I'm trying to get a picture of them on the base.
Okay.
I'm trying to aim it down towards where the crane's lifting it from.
Would you put it back on camera mode?
Yeah, I want to get like underneath.
I see. I think I got it. Can I ask your opinion?
Yeah, I don't think it's right.
Why don't you think it's right?
Because it's not a racist monument. It's meant for people that died during the war. And I'm from New York, and I don't believe in it.
Yeah. And how'd you learn that? Are you just passing through?
No, I live here now.
Oh, you live here now?
Yeah, I've been fighting to keep it. 87% of us don't want it to move.
Okay.
Of St. Augustine residents. It's costing over $500,000
to get it moved.
For nothing. It's
Yeah,
not even a rebel monument. It has nothing to do with racism whatsoever. It's a memorial.
Yeah.
What's next? The wall at Arlington?
Yeah, you heard it. What's next? The wall at Arlington. There is uh, quite a bit of controversy over this. Looks like that may be a news crew that showed up over there, right over there. Here's a comment from Bus to Move saying, doing a good job. Here's thank you for weighing in here, tipping and dipping, saying all statues should remain. It's ridiculous moving statues, changes nothing. So you can see there's quite a hole left by the removal of this. I haven't heard any announcement of precisely what's going to be done here to fill the spot. There's another monument just not too far from here that was moved, and after archaeologists examined the area of that statue, they quickly put fresh sod over it, and so there's no trace of that monument now. So here's a question from Dana saying, what year was the statue put in there? The statue was put here in 1879, so it's been here 141 years. The original memorial was placed on private church land 7 years earlier. At that time, St. Augustine was occupied. The city wouldn't let organizers put the monument in a prominent spot, and so it was on church land for 7 years before it was moved here and reconstructed in 1879. I've read different weights that this weighs, and you're looking at just the half of it. The other half, I think it might be over on that truck, but I haven't looked. I just got here. So the total weight I've seen varying from 25 tons up to 100 tons. So who knows how heavy this thing is. A Long Island company is moving this memorial, and they specialize in moving monuments and houses. So here's a question: how close are they to raising and removal? How far to the new site? The new site is 19 miles away, and as far as how close they are to moving it, I don't know. I saw that they were working on this on Facebook Live, and I rushed over here. I live about 25 miles away, and so I came over to see what was going on. And I missed the removal of the second half of this monument, and so that's already gone. So here's Tippin and Dippin saying, I'm black, I see no benefit in removing statues. Remove dilapidated houses instead. And for sure, the city was under a lot of pressure. There was some protests and even rioting going on in other cities over the killing of George Floyd. And my guess is that the city officials thought that, that could come to St. Augustine, and so they felt it was better to just get rid of it. So here's a comment. I'm trying to read it here. The monument honors people who forgot to defend the practice of chattel slavery. They attacked the United States of America. Should traitors be honored? Where's Benedict Arnold's statue? He was a brilliant general for Washington until... And then here's Carolyn. Let's see. Bus to Move says the threat of protest is serious. And there have been protests here. I just started covering this issue 3 weeks ago, so I missed a big protest in the last week or so of July. Last Sunday I was here, and there were shouting matches between supporters of the statue and supporters of Black Lives Matter. Here's the original ad commenting, when it's gone, they'll just find another thing to cancel. I wonder how much it costs to remove. What I've read is, and I can't remember the exact amount, but it was something like $230,000 or $40,000, the contract to remove, but that's off the top of my head. So during the debate over removing this statue, one of the city council members told everyone that her descendants were slaves, or slave owners, pardon me, that she had in her family slave owners, because some of those who opposed the monument had pointed out that some of the original families whose soldiers were killed here owned slaves, about half of them, according to one document that I read. And so it was interesting that one of the city council members who voted in favor of relocating the statue said that her family, her descendants, owned slaves, and despite that, she didn't support the statue any longer and wanted to have it moved. Here's a comment. Let's see. This is slavery should not be forgotten. Need to learn why it was wrong. Here's Bust to Move. We had a protest in our town. It was frightening. Carolyn says, this is absolutely insane that people have been given the power to try to remove history. And I'm just going to flip the camera around for a moment here. This back here, you can see off in the distance is the Bridge of Lions. And this enclosed pavilion is what's euphemistically referred to as the slave market. And I've read that slaves were once sold here, and I've also read that after the Civil War, there were tourism boosters who would try to kind of inflate the reputation or of this as a slave market to try to bring tourists down from the north who wanted to see remnants of the Civil War. So the nearby monument that was moved was a monument to General William Loring, and that was on land that's managed by the University of Florida, I believe. And that monument had the general's remains under it, and there was a tomb, and it was for opponents of relocating these statues, it was even more infuriating that it was moved. The other difference between that monument and this one was that one did have a very prominent Confederate flag on one side because General Loring did fight in the Civil War. I'm going to sign off for a minute, and I'm going to reconnect. My phone is overheating, so it's kind of hot here in the sun. So I will sign off, let the phone